Had you ever watched someone's eyes turn cold before their words changed at all? You know that strange moment when the room feels normal yet something quietly drops out. A smile stays in place, but the eyes stop participating and you feel it instantly. You may have noticed this in dates, meetings, friendships, arguments, even perfectly polite conversations. Nothing obvious happens, which is exactly why the moment feels so hard to explain. You sense something shift before words catch up, and your body believes it first. Most people dismiss it as awkwardness, random distraction, or your mind creating drama. But when the gaze turns cold, the signal usually is not random at all. It often marks emotional mismatch, the split between what someone says and what they feel. And that mismatch unsettles you because the mind notices inconsistency faster than language can explain it. The eyes are often first to leak tension, withdrawal, resentment, fear, or sudden internal distance. Not because eyes magically expose souls, but because control usually weakens at the edges. You can rehearse a sentence, fake warmth, even manage your smile for a moment. But a delayed blink, frozen stare, or sudden visual withdrawal slips through anyway. That is why some interactions feel wrong, even when nothing clearly rude was said. The strange part is rarely the sentence itself, it is the timing around it. Someone answers fast, but their eyes arrive late, as if emotion missed the cue. Or they say something kind, then their gaze briefly hardens after the words land. You have probably felt this before and doubted yourself almost immediately afterward. Because the coldness is subtle, your mind searches for a simpler, safer explanation. Maybe they are tired, shy, stressed, distracted, socially clumsy, or just having an off day. Sometimes that is true, and that is exactly why context matters so much. But repeated cold gaze moments usually mean something more specific is moving underneath the conversation. It could be resistance, concealed judgment, hurt, attraction, defensiveness, or a private emotional calculation. The key is not panic over one glance, but curiosity about the pattern around it. Because what unsettles you usually appears before explanation and long before any confession. Think about a compliment that lands strangely, even though the words sound completely fine. Someone smiles and says thank you, yet their eyes turn distant for a beat. Most people assume modesty, awkwardness, or surprise and then move on quickly. But that tiny distance can signal discomfort with attention, suspicion of motive, or buried insecurity. The important thing is not mind reading, it is noticing where expression and feeling stop matching. Once you notice mismatch, ordinary conversations start revealing hidden emotional weather everywhere. And the deeper layer is this: cold gaze does not always mean dislike. Sometimes it marks effort, the strain of holding something down while staying socially acceptable. A person can feel threatened, impressed, hurt, attracted, exposed, or guilty, then go visually still. That stillness feels cold, because warmth requires spontaneity, and spontaneity disappears under internal pressure. The eyes stop flowing naturally, and suddenly the interaction feels less alive. You notice it before words explain it because your brain tracks rhythm more than statements. It reads pace, gaze, delay, stillness, and those tiny ruptures people rarely plan. That is why a cold look can feel louder than an entire paragraph. Imagine you ask a simple question, and someone answers warmly without meeting your eyes. On the surface, nothing seems wrong, and most people call it basic shyness. Sometimes it is shyness, especially if the whole person seems consistently soft, hesitant, and self-conscious. But if the warmth sounds practiced while the gaze keeps escaping, another story may be unfolding. They may be protecting something, managing discomfort, or trying to control how much gets revealed. Eye avoidance with warm words can be politeness covering tension, not comfort creating connection. You may misread that as disinterest when it is actually anxiety about being seen too clearly. The viewer feels that difference because the contact is verbal but not truly relational. Then there's the opposite pattern, which feels even stranger in real life. Someone holds eye contact too long after an ordinary comment, and the mood changes. Most people call that confidence, flirtation, dominance, or just a strong personality. But extended still eye contact after a neutral remark often signals evaluation, not connection. They may be checking your reaction, testing control, masking irritation, or calculating what to say. When gaze lingers without warmth, you feel observed rather than met there. That is why prolonged eye contact can feel colder than quick avoidance in some moments. That is a very different experience, and your nervous system usually notices immediately. The third pattern is quieter but often more revealing than either avoidance or staring. Someone receives a compliment, pauses too long, then smiles as though catching up. People usually assume they are being humble, surprised, or simply unsure how to respond. But delayed reaction often means the real emotion arrived before the acceptable one did. Maybe they felt exposed, disbelieved you, wanted more, or resented needing your approval. The pause is not empty. It is the mind editing itself in public. The smile appears second, but the first emotion already left its fingerprint in timing. This is why the cold gaze matters beyond curiosity or social entertainment. Subtle visual mismatch shapes trust long before people can explain why they pulled back. It affects dating, because attraction often hides inside restraint as much as openness. It affects friendships because resentment rarely announces itself before distance slowly appears. It affects work because power struggles often leak through eyes before emails turn colder. It affects conflict because people start withdrawing emotionally before they withdraw verbally. You can sense something shift, and that early signal helps you respond more intelligently. Not by accusing anyone, but by noticing where pressure appears and what keeps repeating. That is the practical value here, better perception, not dramatic certainty alone. Once you notice these patterns, conversations stop feeling vague and start feeling readable. Not perfectly readable, but clear enough to catch the moment tension enters the room. The goal is to notice clusters, because clusters reveal pressure more reliably than single moments. One cold glance proves nothing, just like one smile proves very little. But repeated mismatch around certain topics, people, or emotions usually deserves attention. If someone's eyes shift every time commitment appears, that pattern means more than one sentence. If their face softens while their eyes harden whenever praise appears, notice that contradiction. If they look calm until one name comes up, the silence already contains information. People often believe truth lives only in words, but words are usually edited last. A sentence can be polished, but a reaction delay usually cannot be polished as easily. The body reacts earlier, especially in the face, the eyes, and response timing. That early reaction is not always truth, but it is often unfiltered conflict. And conflict is exactly what the cold gaze tends to reveal first. Sometimes the conflict is between politeness and annoyance held carefully behind social grace. Sometimes it is between attraction and fear, interest and self-protection, honesty and image. Sometimes it is between wanting closeness and hating how vulnerable closeness feels. That is why the same cold gaze can mean different things in different moments. The same look from a stranger feels different than the same look from a partner. The meaning lives in context, sequence, history, and what happens before and after. You read it best by asking quiet questions, not making loud conclusions. What topic had just appeared when the eyes changed temperature that fast? Was the pause before the answer, after the answer, or only after your reaction? Did the face and voice stay aligned, or did one arrive later than the other? Those questions keep you observant without turning every interaction into a conspiracy board. You are not trying to catch people. You are trying to understand the moment better. Because paranoia starts when people turn clues into verdicts before the full pattern appears. And psychology becomes useful only when it increases clarity rather than fear for you. So if you have seen a cold gaze, do not rush to label it. Notice whether it appears once or whether it follows a particular trigger. Notice whether the eyes go distant, hard, still, guarded, or simply less alive. Notice whether the timing feels off before the content does to you. That sequence matters because people often manage words after emotion has already leaked. The deepest reaction is often the quietest one, especially when someone wants control. And control often looks calm on the outside while turbulence moves underneath. Sometimes the coldness is brief because the person regains control before the conversation notices. Sometimes it lasts, and that lasting quality is what makes the exchange unforgettable. That is one reason emotionally loaded conversations can feel chilly before becoming openly tense. The gaze cools first, then the posture stiffens, then the language finally catches up. By the time words reveal the problem, your nervous system already noticed the trailer. This matters in romance because mixed signals are often not random confusion. They are often two motives colliding, and the eyes briefly show the collision. It matters in friendships because hurt people often keep speaking normally while withdrawing visually. It matters at work because agreement on paper can hide resistance in person. And it matters in family life because old emotions often surface through tiny reactions. That is why you may leave a conversation feeling drained without knowing which sentence did it. Often no sentence caused it, the tension lived in everything surrounding the sentence. You do not need perfect interpretation to benefit from noticing these shifts. You just need enough awareness to slow down and stop trusting words alone. That pause can save you from forcing intimacy where comfort is missing. It can stop you from misreading attraction as sincerity or politeness as ease. It can help you ask better questions instead of obeying your worst assumptions. And sometimes it simply confirms what you already felt but could not name. Your mind stores those mismatches, then recalls them later when trust suddenly feels thinner. That is why some people seem harmless on paper, yet unsettling in person. That matters more than people admit, because unnamed tension quietly shapes behavior. It changes how close you stand, how long you stay, what you reveal. It decides whether a conversation deepens, stalls, turns polite, or goes strangely flat. And many of those turning points begin with the eyes, not the mouth. Still, balance matters because one isolated signal should never become your whole verdict. One tired glance can mean fatigue, stress, grief, distraction, pain, or nothing personal. One delayed reaction can come from anxiety, not deception or hidden resentment. One hard stare can come from processing, not power, hostility, or manipulation. Smart observation means leaving room for alternative explanations while still respecting repeated discomfort. You become more perceptive when you stop chasing certainty and start reading consistency. But when the same mismatch repeats, especially around meaningful themes, attention becomes wisdom. Patterns matter more than moments, and clusters matter more than isolated signals. Repeated emotional mismatch matters most, because repetition reveals structure instead of noise. So when the gaze turns cold, the question is rarely just what happened. The better question is, what feeling arrived first, before the words could organize it? That is where subtle psychology lives, in the gap between performance and impulse. And that gap is often where trust begins, cracks, or quietly disappears. If Novi Mind helps you notice what most people miss, stay with us. Share one strange reaction you have seen that words never fully explained. And subscribe if you want sharper insight into the signals people hide in plain sight. Because the next time someone seems warm while their eyes do something else, you will know. In the next Novi Mind episode, we explore why some smiles feel comforting and others feel dangerous.